Hey guys, it's David All, and thanks a lot for reading my website, and especially this article, which is about the opioid epidemic in Ohio and my work to help address it. So, the first thing that I want to point out is that I didn't mean to get involved with the opioid epidemic, but I think that's pretty standard for most folks, whether their son or daughter or the person themselves becomes addicted, or lots of different agencies actually in Ohio don't mean to get involved, but they are involved. In fact, it's like what was so interesting about the work in general is that it has such a comprehensive way of pulling communities together, and yet they still work very disparately and not together to do their little piece of addressing the opioid epidemic. So that being said, let me state that I got involved because a nonprofit called the Neighborhood House, which is the oldest settlement house in Columbus, invited us to really just think about whether or not we could build a clinic for them. They had an outpatient clinic, which typically deals with alcoholics or lesser drugs, but they don't have the potential to work with patients on uh, opioids, for example, and addicted to opioids. And they didn't have a doctor on staff to prescribe medication to help deal with the addiction. So my business partner and I worked with the team at the neighborhood house, and we really, because we had no budget, we had to innovate in so many different ways. Whether that was trying to dream up even the funding model. So, a lot of places will be cash only or take private insurance because Medicaid doesn't have a great reimbursement rate. And so we actually became very innovative here, and we said, look, we're not going to take any private insurance, and we're also not going to accept any cash. Now, this is sort of like the two things that fund most of the clinics throughout the country right now are those two things. So it was pretty wild for us to imagine a model where we were only reliant on Medicaid. But we did, and we did so with a clinical director, a fantastic clinical director with all sorts of experience, and a doctor, a medical doctor who helped us reimagine how we could do things and still do everything within the guidelines of Medicaid's reimbursement. And we, in fact, launched Well HQ, which was a clinic, in 2015, and we did so without pretty much any budget. And one thing that I recognized, and you'll see this throughout this article, is that when we opened up our doors for the first time, it was people from within the neighborhood that came running in. And I would talk to those people, right? Because I'm sort of the front of the house, right? I want to learn how they heard about us and these types of things. And they told me that before we opened up our doors, there was nowhere for them to turn. And so they were just trapped inside of being addicted. And to me, this is sort of the ultimate, the problem, right, with poverty is that the access to things like treatment, even when you're addicted, are non existent. And so I came up with this idea called a recovery desert. It's based on the food desert model, or the lesser known but more interesting mass transit desert, which didn't have as much publicity, but if you look it up, it's a really great academic article and very closely matches what I was thinking about at the time. So the importance of these ideas, these big ideas like recovery deserts, are that academics like Dr. Harvey Miller at Ohio State were able to seize upon it to say, this is what I do. He's like, as a geography professor and expert, he solves problems like this for communities. And so then he was able to invite his colleagues in to help solve the equation. Before I brought this up and sort of termed it what it was and knew who to bring it to, these academics were sitting on the sidelines. And so this is the challenge, I think, in general with civic challenges, is that they're not fully utilizing the people who want to make an impact or that can make an impact if they're asked. And because someone was there like me who had firsthand knowledge and look, I could point out exactly who was saying what, etc., we were able to create what's now an academic paper, and I'm a co-author being published on this idea of recovery deserts that I believe will be one of my greatest gifts to the world. So there are a few other things that I did along the way, typically around the idea of like better branding and marketing and communication. The stuff that the soft stuff, maybe that the soft skills that civic organizations severely lack or don't really think is that important. But they did matter and they do make an impact. And so, look, I'm really, really pleased with the work I did in the opioid epidemic. It's also incredibly frustrating, as you might imagine, because I saw the next few. I see a lot of ways that I could be even more helpful, right, and continue down the path of big data and bringing communities together around a data plan and stuff like that. And yet there's like no path for involvement. And I sort of fell into involvement in the first place by being asked by a nonprofit that was struggling to survive if we could help. And we said, yeah, we can. So I think that's ultimately the problem, is that, we need more folks that are willing, that are inside of these organizations that say, look, we need to invite the community to participate in a very meaningful way to help us solve these challenges. Because right now they're spending all their time treading water, and they're not really making as much of an impact as they could if they were all working together. So this is, I hope, look, give me some feedback on this video, david@davidall.com. Again, david@davidall.com. Would love to hear kind of your thoughts on the opioid epidemic, if it's ever touched you, or if you think any of the work here could happen in your neighborhood, etc. Kind of let me know what you think. But that's it.